Hey everyone, it's Austin in the middle. Long time no see, but I'm back and I'm ready to talk about some things that I'm passionate about that aren't horror related. As you might know from my other channels, Horror Free for All, and my other former, now dead channel, Horror Free for All. I used to go by Goosebumps Completionist once upon a time, so you might recognize me from there. Hello. So I have here a video game review of a game that I grew up with as a child, as a kid that was born in 94 and spent a lot of my formative years in the early to mid 2000s. I have a lot of reverence for this game, even though it's a part of a dormant franchise that, as of recent, about 2 years ago, was announced to be coming back. And this franchise, since its dormancy a few years back, actually spawned a whole new franchise that I've also been playing in conjunction with me playing this game, which this game in particular is in my top 3 favorite video games of all time, next to arguably my favorite video game of all time, Marvel vs. Capcom 2 and Bully, which are my big 2 favorites. This one will be my third, and we're going to be looking at Jet Set Radio Future. Now, Jet Set Radio Future was the follow-up to the now classic Sega Dreamcast original Jet Set Radio that released in, I think, 2000. And it was a smash hit. And of course, when Sega folded after the Dreamcast and the original Xbox came to light and Microsoft was looking for things to buy up, like Rare Games with the Banjo-Kazooie title and Conker and all that, Sega decided to get in bed with the original Xbox and released this as one of the initial launch titles in the early 2000s. Now, let me tell you this. As a kid, growing up in the early 2000s, it seemed like everybody had camps. Whether you were a GameCube guy, maybe coming off the 64 hype, or you're a PS2 guy coming off the PS1 hype, but the Xbox was revolutionary for its time, for its marketing. And honestly, this is just me speaking on experience. At the time when the Xbox was releasing, I saw some of the exclusive titles they were getting, and they just looked badass. Nowadays, most of them look pretty dated, and most of the original games for the time, aside from maybe Halo Combat Evolved, which is also a stellar game from the time period, haven't aged well at all, and aren't that playable or revisitable unless you're playing with a group of people that grew up with these games with you. But Jet Set Radio Future is one of these games that I think revolutionized my mind as a kid. I remember when I got my very first original Xbox magazine, the demo to this game was on that disc that was included in the magazine subscription. And I can remember playing the demo all day for weeks and weeks and weeks, just falling in love with that one little snippet of the game I was allowed to play. And I begged and begged and begged my dad to take me to Blockbuster, which was right across the street from me growing up, to go try to find a copy of this game. Now, this game wasn't a popular seller in its initial launch, and most people got their copy with the Xbox itself when they got it. I think it came with like a racing game and Jet Set Radio Future. My copy here is actually like a standalone version that was a former rental that I've had ever since I was a kid. So it used to have like the rental case that Blockbuster would have, and I've converted it. The disc over the years got beat to shit, and I had to get it refurbed a few years back so I could play it. But playing it this time around, I decided to try to play through the whole game and beat it before I did a review, because it's been a long time since I beat the game when I was younger. And I had a ball with this game. I'm more of the kind of video game player that I'm more of like a pick up and play kind of person. I've never been heavily focused on story unless it's a part of a movie franchise that I'm into, that I'm getting the game for the story, or the selling point for the game is the story for me. Most of the time when I pick up a game, I'm looking for immersion. I'm looking for gameplay. I'm looking for style, originality, and I'm looking for that addictive quality to it to make me want to spend all day on a rainy day to play the game. And Jet Set Radio Future was that game for me as a kid, maybe next to Tony Hawk Pro Skater 3, that I can play all day long with my friends and never be bored. And we could take turns, do whatever, but we would have so much fun playing this game growing up. And it's a very simple game. You know, I'm going to keep this mostly a spoiler-free review in case you haven't played the game before. You can easily go find, you know, play-by-plays online and specifically on YouTube about people showing you clip footage of the game to get a better sense of it. But you really have no idea what you're getting into this game with until like you see it up front and center, right? It's a straightforward game about a group of, I guess, outcasts or maybe rebels to society in this place called Tokyo-to, I think that's what it's called. And there's an evil corporation, I think it's called the Rokun Group or something like that, where they have basically infiltrated the local government of Tokyo-to, down to the mayor of Tokyo, the chief of police and everything. And essentially society has become corrupted by these individuals to the point where underground society has to take to radio, like DJK, who's very iconic in this series, if you know anything about Jet Set Radio, who's basically the narrator of this game, telling you about the story as it's going along for these characters. Basically, it's up to people like DJK and this underground society to give people the real story about what's going on. And you follow this group of rollerblading, I guess, gang members, or I guess resistance to gang members, who are trying to clean up the act of the city by having their own counterculture movement to add to the story, right? So they walk around with graffiti, spray painting gang logos across the street with their own logo, cleaning up the streets, fighting gang members, tracking them down, and there's boss battles where you literally have to spray paint people and all of that. And there's 3 different main areas of the game that you get to unlock and you get to explore. And there's countless different rival groups that you come across. And then you end up at the end, of course, with the final boss and what that entails. So yeah, very straightforward game. It's a pick up and play game. But what you're going to notice off the bat about this game is the style. Now, I don't want to get too much into a rant about this upcoming Jet Set Radio game that's supposed to be coming out soon from Sega, where they're, I guess, remaking the original or maybe making an unofficially official 3rd installment, which I guess we already have with this game that I actually brought for this video called Bomb Rush Cyberpunk, which in a lot of ways is the spiritual successor to Jet Set Radio Future. It's basically continuing what this game was a continuation of with the original Jet Set Radio, from what I've gathered. So this, to me, is the real Jet Set Radio 3 because of the style, the cell animation, the attention to that, the colors, the I want to say the lack of detail is the best adjective for this, but I will say the emotiveless faces of the main characters or the NPCs in the game, down to the vibe of the city, right? In this game it's New Amsterdam, and in this game it is Tokyo-to, but in a lot of ways they feel cut from the same cloth. You got these you got neon lights at nighttime. You got these over-the-top shopping malls with crazy advertisements and just all these things like billboards and what have you to traverse in the game that just suck you into this world. And it's hard to explain unless you played it. But in all actuality, this game isn't special for that, more so than it's special for when you play this game. And this mainly relies on if you grew up in the early 2000s or you would just love 2000s culture, you know, post Y2K. this just takes you back to that. When I play this game, just by looking at it, when the game starts up and hearing that iconic song, which is a sample of some guy in a speech, right? I'm blanking on the guy who did the soundtrack for the Jet Set Radio games, who also, I think, did the soundtrack for Bomb Rush Cyberpunk, ironically. But it is fantastic. One of my favorite video game soundtracks of all time. Just hearing that song, seeing the opening title, it reminds me of just watching Fox Kids in the early 2000s, watching JetX, or, playing with Tamagotchis, having translucent Dell computers, Game Boy SPs, being mercilessly advertised on, cable television of various toy products. This takes you back to being a kid each and every time. The gameplay, I know most people are probably here to hear the actual review of the game. The gameplay is very easy to pick up. They have a tutorial in the beginning of the game, which mainly involves the three main characters of the franchise, which are Gum, Corn, and Beat. Beat is the mascot. He is the guy on the cover here. Beat is an awesome character. I always look for stuff related to this character when I'm out and about, like thrifting. If you go online on like eBay, for example, and you try to look up Jet Set Radio merch involving Beat, it is not cheap at all. But yeah, you mainly play around these three characters. And yeah, you have to play through the game to unlock some other characters too, like Combo, Yo-Yo, Bro-Boy, and what have you, which are all awesome characters in their own right. But what makes the game fun is the just jump in arcadey nature to it, which I think sadly a lot of modern games, aside from maybe some 2D platformers, are heavily missing, because modern gaming has become so story focused and cutscene focused and cinematic focused that it's almost like you're just watching a movie where you kind of play along on some facets of it than actually just playing a game. You know what I mean? The arcadey nature here makes this game fun. Absolutely fun. Whether you're grinding on rails to try to combo string to get a high score bonus, or you're jumping from a rail over to a billboard to rocket you over to another grind combo to gather some spray paint cans so you have enough cans to graffiti all the stuff around the map. Or let's say there's various points on each level that you arrive to on your map marker, which I think is a cell phone, which is really cool. I know Bomb Rush Cyberpunk homaged it in its own way in its game too. But in this game, your objective tracking is really good. So you can keep track on each time you go back to a level to be able to get what you need done to where you can unlock the next stage. And it makes the game so rewarding, because the more you practice each level, the more you memorize where things are at. And it becomes a game where, honestly, it's very fun to just try to speedrun it casually. This is one of those games, kind of like Halo Combat Evolved, ironically, where it's very easy to remember where everything's at, and it makes you want to try to perform faster each and every time, so that way you can get to the harder parts of the game. Now, I will say some levels are easier than others because of the simplicity to what you have to do. Sometimes you're just chasing people, following them around, trying to play the guessing game of where they're at in the map, and you have to get there within a certain time or do a certain thing, like a combo string or whatever, to get to that character. Or you'll have some really challenging moments of the game that can be kind of hair-pulling at times because of the difficulty to it, where you're just so frustrated that you can't get this one movement down, or you can't make this one jump right, that you're just like, what am I doing wrong? You know what I mean? And putting aside the nitpicks that you can possibly have with the game, with like maybe the repetitiveness of the NPCs constantly getting in the way, and some irritations to certain characters' stats, which is probably the biggest, barrier to entry. If you're coming to this review, you probably heard of Bomb Rush Cyberpunk, where in this game, a lot of the characters are even they kind of play the same. There's no stat element to it. There's an outfit element to it. Here, there's a stat element, and some characters work best on certain levels and certain stages of the game. And you pretty much have to try to push your limits with the characters you have access to, which is part of the charm, in my opinion. But I can see for people that could be a problem, especially at certain parts of the game, where it literally requires you to be precision accurate, or you're gonna have to restart the whole level or go back to the beginning. So I get that. In a lot of ways, it is very much a game of its time, where these were games that came out pre, internet being a focus with video games. So these games were made without, people being on message boards in mass quantities as they are these days to look up how-to videos on YouTube or anything, because YouTube wasn't around. So a lot of people had to rely on trial and error and actual true skill to play games. If you're lucky, maybe your instruction manual that came with the game would tell you and give you some tips and tricks to it. Or you can buy a strategy guide, which was hugely popular back in the day. I think Brady Games alone probably made a killing and a fortune just by selling these things, right? And yeah, I guess you can make an argument it's stuck in that time for that reason. But for me, growing up with games like this, I don't bat an eye to it, right? It's just one of those games that everything about it's screaming originality. And this game, because it was so iconic, and because this game was the last of the franchise for so long, and I guess we'll have to hold our breath until we inevitably get this next Jet Set Radio installment, that people over at Team Reptile, who developed Bomb Rush Cyberfunk, had to bring back the style because they understood why Jet Set Radio Future was so special. And by extension, the original Jet Set Radio too. I lament I've never played the original Jet Set Radio. I know it's on Steam. I'm holding out hope that maybe Sega one day will put Jet Set Radio and Jet Set Radio Future, if they can ever get the license to Jet Set Radio Future, which I think is preventing this from happening anyway, onto the Switch in some capacity, whether it be a physical release or maybe a download release. I don't care. I know right now this game for at least PC is currently being decompiled for PC gaming, which might encourage modding and people coming back to the game in large quantities, which I would be down for. I'm not a big PC gamer, but I do PC game when it comes to stuff like that, especially in games that I love. I like to see some modded takes sometimes, and this has been a big want for a long time. And I remember when I heard about Bomb Rush Cyberfunk, which I'm probably going to make its own review for soon. I'm almost done with the game. I feel that I was like, this game brought back just how it felt to play Jet Set Radio Future for the first time. And just for the sheer fact that this game, which by its own merit, is also spawning its own sequel called Hyperfunk, which I'm super ecstatic for. In the modern era, kind of shows you, especially if you're trying to compare both of these games, how gaming was back in the early 2000s and how gaming is now. They both have completely different qualities, but they both hit that vibe. They hit that mark of what it was to be counterculture in the early 2000s. And I stress this, that's why this game, I think, is one of the greatest games of all time. Because the fact that it transcends the gameplay, it transcends its style, and it literally represents a whole mindset of an entire generation of people, I feel personally, is incredible. It's incredible. You just don't see games like this ever these days. And that's why I have always held it in such high regard. Like I said, next to Marvel vs. Capcom 2 and Bully. Like, this trio of games basically summarizes me as a video game fan. And playing through this time around, I will say it did take me on and off over a course of a few days, about 10 to 11 hours. Granted, I'm not the best person at playing video games. So far for this game, I've put about 4 to 5 hours and I'm almost done. So I think this game has a better barrier to entry when it comes to difficulty compared to this. which, like I said, could be a deterrent for a lot of people coming into this game. But that does not shy away from the fact that I did like the challenge, and I just really loved the game. Is it a perfect game? No. Is it a flawless game? No. But did I have fun playing this and would recommend everybody to at least play this game one time in their life? Absolutely. Yeah, you would need to get some hardware to be able to play this, but it's worth the experience. I promise you, I promise you, I promise you, you need to play Jet Set Radio Future. You just need to. So for me, I'd probably give this game on my personal scale a 5 out of 5. I think this is a perfect game. I think this is a game that everybody needs to experience and treasure and see for what it's done for gaming, or I guess the cultural impact of gaming over time. And I can't be the only person that thinks this way about this game. I don't think I am, because I see a lot of fans out there on YouTube who are massive fans of this game, and I'm there with you, man. I just see the brilliance, I see the vision, and it's always resonated with me. So yeah, that's my thoughts on Jet Set Radio Future. Let me know down in the comment section if you played this video game before. Do you love it? Do you hate it? I'm dying to know. And I'll see you next time.